You'll hear it when I talk about everything. Don't want to see it.
Could have been more brutal. Yeah, that was gonna be a tough one no matter
Why
what.
don't we reconvene in 2 minutes if anyone needs to do a bio break?
I wanted to bite into this arm, but I just figured I had a mouthful of caramel. Called upon to
I kind of
speak.
wanted to do it for policy start.
Yeah. Oh,
I need that
And then there's options.
So Kelly stepped away, she'll get back.
So, yeah, right. Exactly.
They're saving your seat.
Modern.
At this time, I'm gonna go ahead and call the Dresden, meeting to order at 7:39.
Sorry, Rick.
Oh. Actually, we're gonna start with a public hearing first to accept the donation from the Byrne Foundation. Does someone have? Kim.
Move to approve with sincere gratitude the donation from the Byrne Foundation in the amount of $40,000 for the music department as presented.
Do I have a second? Does anyone want to explain, or is anyone from the music department here?
No, they usually, the music department usually asks the Byrne Foundation to help with this.
Okay.
So they can cover all the students.
Okay.
And so they asked again, and
They,
really delivered big.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So great. I just want to thank the Byrne Foundation. So at this point, if we can, all those in favor of accepting the donation, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. I already did. Kelly will be back around 8, she said. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and start the Dresden School Board meeting. Yep. Oh. Agenda review. Does anyone have anything to add or remove from our agenda tonight? Does anyone have anything to add?
No one?
No one.
No
Okay,
one.
moving on.
Thank you. I think we had discussed either in between meetings or at the end of the last meeting to have on our agenda tonight to talk about a tuition, to look at tuition and potentially have a committee, or we can talk about whether we want to form a committee to look at tuition. I don't think we need to have a substantive discussion tonight about what should or shouldn't be, but we can talk about what the committee could look at.
Okay, so we'll add that to business requiring discussion. Anything else? So at this point, moving on to public comments. I will give each member of the public 3 minutes to comment on items not on the agenda. The board respectfully asks members of the public to state their name and address before commenting on an agenda topic. Do we have anyone here at the school board? Anyone on Zoom? Not seeing anyone. We're moving on. So at this point, we're gonna get the report of our high school council rep. Vidushi, you there?
Hi, yeah, so council has had a great start to the year, and last week we celebrated the 50th anniversary of council with a discussion moderated by Miss Caldwell, who is a former social studies teacher and a Hanover High alum, and we had Mr. Bob McCarthy, the former principal under whom council was created, and Molly Blight, former librarian and council executive, as panelists. And they led us through how council has evolved over the years and discussed some of the more well-known motions that have been passed. Judiciary committee elections are running right now, and we should have a fully formed committee by the end of the week. And in terms of motions, there is currently a motion that would require teachers to notify students if they intend to have a pop quiz. Other motions that we passed are mainly allocations for clubs.
Thank you, Vidushi. Can you explain what the judiciary does in the school? Who are they judging?
Yeah, so actually I can, because I was the chair last year as well. So what we do is we review disciplinary actions that students get from the administration. So if a student feels that the disciplinary action given to them is unfair, they can file an appeal, and the Judiciary Committee will review what the student has written and will determine whether they want to schedule a hearing. They can vote for or against that, and then they're just using the handbook to review the student's actions and determine what is the proper course of action.
So does that include expulsions and suspensions, or is it more of in the school type of?
It includes suspensions. In terms of expulsions, that is something that is more serious and I think would require a lot more input than just the Judiciary Committee. I think that the administration would be involved. in that, but definitely suspensions and other other disciplinary action.
Thank you. Any other questions for Vidushi? Ben?
Vidushi, this is Ben Keeney. Can you fill me in a little bit on the pop quiz proposal? That seems to be sort of counterintuitive to the concept of a pop quiz to require in advance.
It does. So the pop quiz, essentially students, there are multiple arguments for this motion. I think the main one that I've heard is student mental health. I think a lot of students, especially students that get a lot of pop quizzes, it can affect their mental health when they have a lot and it's affecting their grades and they're not prepared for the quizzes. And I think a lot of students don't appreciate having a grade that maybe isn't representative of like a full semester's worth of work when they are only getting pop quizzes. And so the idea is that teachers must notify that they want to have a pop quiz. I think that you're right that it might be a little bit contrary to what a pop quiz is. And to my knowledge, there is at least one committee on council, the Student Life Committee, that will tomorrow during council say that they disagree with the motion. And I believe that I can say that the Curriculum Committee is also going to say that. But what it has done, I will say, is that it's opened a lot of discussions about kind of how council can legislate about how teachers teach their classes, and also student mental health and what that looks like, and how rigor is involved in classes. So it's certainly a good avenue for those conversations. Yeah.
Ben?
Thanks, Vidushi. Great explanation. If the committee hasn't done so yet, I would urge them to do some sort of survey or similar of the teachers to see if there's variation on pop quiz giving, either at the subject or teacher-specific level, because that might get at these issues. Is it one or two teachers or subject matters that are prompting this level of problems, or is it an overarching issue?
Yeah, I think that the student who had written the motion actually sent out a survey. I'm pretty sure it's aimed at students, not teachers, so I am unsure of the teacher sort of side of that. But I can say from my personal experience, I've been at Hanover for now 4 years, and I've never had a pop quiz. And so I think from what I've heard, it is, specific teachers and their teaching styles that where there are more pop quizzes than other teachers. It's certainly not across the board.
Thanks, Vidushi.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Moving on to Julie.
All right, so 50th Council, which you just heard a little bit about, and just even as evidenced by that conversation, it's really a body we're very proud of. I was about to say something, I don't need to say anything at all, because Vidushi took care of it. You got the Performing Arts Report, which is just a scratching the surface of something you asked for last time, so that's there. In case you're wondering what our equity person has been up to, there's a long report about what they're doing with their time. So I don't know, good questions about that. The Writing Center is just getting off the ground. The hope is, and looking towards next year's budget, that it actually would be writing and STEM, and it could be a center where students come for help for anything regarding academic help, and that there'd be a team of peer tutors there too, and we're trying to think of, do peer tutors get credit for being peer tutors, and how we work that whole system. And also attached, which could be part of this report, to keep things quick for you, is the class size count as of October 1 this year. I included first semester and second semester. The second semester list will grow in terms of numbers of students because they haven't gone in yet to add some things that they might want, and haven't noticed yet that certain things might have disappeared in terms of clashing. We are in good shape in terms of the number of staff we have and the number of sections we want to teach. We're not worried about any spot. And the only issue and things that aren't shown there is we have a number of teachers, especially in our music department, who are teaching independent study with students, and that's not kind of part of their caseload. However, because of the schedule we have, where we're running 2 different schedules at the same time, a block and a period schedule, some students have been bounced out of being able to take a foreign language and a music class. You may have heard that on the street. And in other cases, every year students get bounced out of something because of singletons. but the dual system is posing a problem, and so our music department, rather than losing those students, are taking on those students in their free time and doing independent studies with them. So those aren't reflected here. I think that's it for my report.
So the other night I saw Rob Grable wearing a soccer uniform with a patch. Is that the official logo now? Has that been,
Oh, yeah, so the official logo is out.
okay,
We have it in our athletic department right now, but then other groups are starting to use it. And what we're trying to do is ask people to use the official logo or the H, not to create their own bear, because then we'll end up with our Marauder situation where it was just clip art Marauder.
Yeah.
But that's the actual official one with the hand, the
Yeah.
Norwich.
yeah, look at
Vermont,
that.
New Hampshire,
Yeah.
Vermont teeth, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's there. So if you want board shirts, you should use that logo on them.
I just wanted to express my delight in seeing that there are so many students taking French 5 honors. I think that's a real testament to a whole lot of things, but I was impressed by that number.
Any other,
Thanks, Julie. I think I was the one who asked for the counts on the performing arts.
Yeah.
Clarifying question on that.
Yeah.
Are these the people who are sort of full-time participants, or does it include the counts of people who like applied and do not get in?
These are so this is reflecting our co-curricular arts. So this isn't people who applied and didn't get in. And, oh, I know what you're saying. Like if you went to the play and you didn't get into
Yeah,
the play.
exactly.
In the fall,
Like
everybody
tryouts.
gets in. So, but it doesn't include the people who applied to be in an a cappella group and tried out and didn't get in. I don't have that. Would that be of interest?
I'm just
Like,
curious
how
if
many
you
people
happen
are
to know offhand.
Yeah. And there's a couple, the Footlighters group said they have a couple more boys that they've just added because they've started, the stage crew group just arrived and more people came than had said they were coming, so it wasn't in time for this report.
and is no binary, is that
Non-binary.
non-binary? Okay, I'm not being snarky.
Sorry.
I just didn't know if that's a new
Yeah.
term. No,
I don't know what I did to them.
Lisa,
Yeah, back to the numbers. I had a question about the learning strategies. Are there really 133 sections and only 2.3 kids in each section?
Right. So, yeah, so I probably should have taken that out of there.
Okay.
But learning strategies, they've had to, based on the schedule, basically put a section everywhere in the schedule. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
I
So
just,
that one probably is a bad one. I thought I took it out, but it's there.
it's there.
Oops, sorry.
No, I mean, I was excited. 300 kids are taking it. That's amazing. But I was trying to figure out how you were staffing that at like 2 kids, at 2 students per section.
No.
On the survey, which you may or may not have seen, there was a couple of comments about the high school tutoring program,
Yes.
appreciating that it's there, but concerns that because it was in a specific physical location,
Yeah.
some students were uncomfortable going in because of the implications of going into a
Yes.
help tutoring center.
Yeah.
Is there an ability to do sort of like off-site or atypical meetups on student requests or anything like that?
There would be, but then the other thought too is, and this might be too much information, but the place where it would be is a room that's on the other side of the quiet study. And what we're thinking of doing is sort of rerouting a section where so people would be in the library and you can kind of go up the ramp and stumble into the tutoring center instead of going down a hall and going in and being, right, you're just going into the library and suddenly we went to a certain corner of the library and that's the tutoring center. So hopefully that will help because it'll feel more central and you're not going into one room to get help. Like you're going to the library, everyone kind of walks into the library and it's minorly chaotic sometimes during the day in here, so you wouldn't even know that they went to the tutoring center. But of course, there would be that ability. But I'll pass that on too, just to make sure they would add that.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
any other questions or comments?
The class size is
Yes.
Julie. There are a number that are, well, we're not, I mean, we've
Yeah.
had past years where we've done 2 and 3 for math.
Or like French last year, we had a 4.
Yeah, so at what point, I mean, are there any that you're considering you don't, I hate this, I'm surprised that the Code of Government's got 6, things
Right,
like
so-
ancient Greek and.
Right, and that didn't, so we didn't say yes to anything that was below 10, right? When we went, through the planning process, we were like no lower than 10, and even 10s we didn't let run. And then the schedule did its thing, and conflicts happened and kids got bounced out. So that's why I feel like second semester, some things will fill, because then students who didn't get something else will switch what they want, and so that those numbers will grow. But that Greek, we never would have said yes to Greek, but then there we were, right? And then what do you say to those kids who have it in their schedule and we just started and all those other kids just got bounced? So, what we probably would do is in a future year question the 10 or 12 and say, in order to run this class, this one has to be 20, because we know in the singleton bounce outs are gonna happen. Yeah. And put it somewhere else that would, that's a section, to make something bigger or smaller. Yeah.
And what is the thinking on the introductory French? I guess we want to offer it, even though
It's
it's already offered.
Right, so that's the hard part. It's, at least this year, it's what, 7 or something, is that if we don't offer one, then the kids from Lyme can do it because they're doing French, but the kids from Heartland, the kids from different school districts who are coming here can't even start French, right? And who haven't had French, and so that's the hard piece. It's what's the entry, so then they only have an entry level in our other languages, and maybe we're okay with that, and maybe we should just go with that, but it feels like, well, then that just stops the road for them in French, so for them, French is not an option, where everybody else in our district who come from Richmond and people who come from, it's an option. So it's like we shut out an option for our sending school kids.
I guess too, I don't know how to think about this best, but if you've got these classes, and it's great that you consider it starting at 10, at the college, this number,
Right.
it poses a problem here where it's not like you can cut the class after the school year started where everybody's already in their FTE positions.
Right, the contracts
So-
have been given.
Right, so I think, isn't what we need to be ready to look at what's happening this year and then just say, those classes are like that.
Right, like forecast into next
Yeah.
year.
Because, it doesn't do us any good to have a class started and then we're down to 6, and we've got someone who's teaching all that time, and we've got on staff that even if the class is cut, they're still paying.
Right, right.
So,
It could be better to cut it before the contract's done.
And I guess, yeah, so same with French, because it is kind of a repeating theme. We saw that
Yeah.
last year. I guess the question is, are they sending students really, or are they like, seniors who did Spanish and now want to take French? I mean,
Right.
I say this as an example because I did that. I did the AP Spanish, and then I was like, well, senior year, what am I going to do? I'll take
Yeah.
French. And they actually made me take French too, which was fine because you have some sort of background. So I just,
Language,
and I know that's not true for all and whatever,
Right.
but I'm just curious if
Yeah.
that 7 is really our sending
I can
students
double
or
check, but I
something
haven't
else.
heard that they're seniors.
Okay.
I've heard that but I will double check that.
Yeah.
And let you know.
Thank you.
Anything else to do?
More of a philosophical thing, and I kind of like Tom, I don't want to sound callous by asking, but sort of.
Like Tom.
But ostensibly, part of the conditions of having sending students is that we're not gonna gear things towards them. It's up to them what transportation can offer what we have.
Right.
And is there any other department or class where there is something where we're actually doing something specifically for sending students?
Not that I can think of.
This came up on the next agenda about quality indicators, but it's also class related. I saw that Dartmouth doesn't allow taking students for this class anymore. Do you know if that's going to change? Is there someplace else that students go for those advanced classes?
So I asked Tom recently, who's the head of our counseling department, and he doesn't see it opening back up in the foreseeable future. You may want to ask Dartmouth. Yeah. I don't know, it was a COVID thing, but that's not really a thing, right? So is it just, did COVID let people shut the door? Right, I don't know. So I don't know when it's coming back. We should check on it again. VLAX might be a place. We've had a few students take, like someone, I don't know if you remember, because I think you had to sign off on it, Jay. There was a student who took a Stanford class, but it was remote, and they were able to apply that. So we're really looking into expanding our ELOs, which are extended learning options, to allow students to pursue things that we might not have. But the ones right now would be VLAX, and would be if they found some sort of course that was remote on their own, and they could turn it into an ELO independent study situation. I hope the Dartmouth thing comes back, because it was great. It was great for our students, and I would like to think it was interesting for the Dartmouth students to have a different perspective in their room.
Well, it was also a very inexpensive way for the college to reach out to local school districts, because it wasn't just Hanover, to give them a benefit that was academic. And I think that with the new president coming in, it's an opportunity to have a conversation. And I think we should definitely do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The new president.
Mhm.
Okay.
All
Tim?
right, there we go.
All right, I will try to go quickly. In terms of what we have to offer, in terms of an update. No, thanks. So I offered a couple different things. One is in different areas. We do have the breakdown of our section numbers, which are obviously pretty straightforward in terms of the academic classes. This is what we were looking for, to try to keep our numbers low so that we can try to accelerate people. Some of the elective numbers are a little bit up in the air, just because it depends on what the students want that semester. I looked, ukulele was really small, but as the students get to know Mr. Hall, ukulele tends to go up because they really like him. But that's one of the things that we're working on. And in terms of the electives, we have talked to the elective department, and we are working together to put together a consistent grading structure for all of our elective classes, including PE. Before we had some classes that were the standard A through F, and some that were pass-fail, and then both groups basically decided that those really weren't that effective. We had most of our students who took PE or music. 85 to 90% of them were getting A's, which really doesn't reflect what was going on. And then we had some of the students who were in some other classes. The difference between a pass for a student who is doing amazing things. I put in the pictures of Cliff Harriman, who is building the shed for Habitat for Humanity. Those students, obviously, they just get the same grade as someone who was just kind of coming to class and not really making any sort of effort, but not really getting in the way. They'd all get a P. So we basically decided, and we'll start it in the second quarter, that all of our elective classes will go through a 1 through 4, which is harkening back to the way RMS used to be. But all of the classes will have rubrics that basically set up 4 is exceeds expectations, 3 is meets expectations, and the way we talk to parents is both of those are basically an A grade. If you have to translate it into something, that's what it would be.
It's middle school though.
Right, it's middle school, but sometimes people are like, well, what does that mean? Okay, that means you got an A, but whomever your student is, maybe could have done more to get a 4. It also allows for much more individualized grading. 2 would be, okay, you're fine. Maybe this isn't where you want to go with your life. And then 1 is you're sort of getting in the way of everybody else. We would want to keep those obviously to a minimum. So we're going to start that grading structure for all of our elective classes starting in the second quarter. We're trying to do a couple of things with that. 1, give the ability to give positive reinforcement for people who do more, to reduce the grade anxiety that exists in Hanover. I don't know if you know that that exists, but it does. So we're going to work on that, but I think that would be one thing that we're going forward with. Other things, we're meeting with the representatives from Kendall next week to try to reintroduce that partnership between RMS and Kendall, which had existed for a long time. It turns out that the COO of Kendall is a neighbor of mine, so that worked out very well. Our brain project is going forward. We'd like to put that out to you. Are you or someone you know a scientist? Could you come and talk to our 6th graders about some sort of scientific inquiry that you're involved with? Dan Rockmore, if you're listening, that could be something that you could do. Our plus classes are going forward and are really returning a lot of really cool things that we're enjoying walking around with and watching, from steamboats to rockets to all sorts of other things. And we are reinstituting some field trips that we're trying to get going. So we have we sent out something today for the cultural immersion field trips for our 8th graders, Spanish and French. Spanish classes we're going to New York City, French classes we're going to Montreal, and we actually have found another field trip that we're madly working on to try to get done in the first week in November for our students who do not take either Spanish or French. It's a STEM field trip that will go to Foxborough and work with the Patriots in terms of they have a number of math-centered things for our students in Math 8. I think it's a sort of things where they have a team that they get, and then they have to figure out the salary cap and who you're going to spend the money on and all those sorts of math things. And those students, because one of the things that we were very cognizant of is that we do have students who don't take foreign language, and it didn't seem fair to not be able to offer some sort of field trip to those students. Those students are eligible for either the French or the Spanish trip. We made sure that we made that happen. But then there's also this trip that would be out there, so if they wanted one or the other. We're working hard on our field trips for this year and for the next budget year in terms of trying to make sure that they're all educationally viable and not just something that you get because you got through 3 years. So we've talked about going to Montreal is probably way more helpful than going to Six Flags in terms of education. I know the students would fight me on that, but that's maybe not, but that's where we are. Yeah, and the energy is high, and I included some things in terms of there, again, about where we are in terms of people taking different classes, and Mr. Harriman building the shed, which is just standing there with the wall with 8th grade students wielding a giant mallet. He gains my respect every single day.
What was the comment about the Freedom Trail field trip?
The 6th grade has, and this is one of those traditionally, because it happened before I got here, the 6th grade has done a Freedom Trail trip, a one-day trip to Boston where they go and walk the Freedom Trail and talk about the things that have happened, because that fits in with the 6th grade social studies curriculum. And they are looking into that. I think probably going forward, not this year, but the year after that, it's something that they're looking to sort of reinvigorate. This year they went to, during our PD day, they went to Old Fort Number 4 to see if that would be something that would be helpful, good for the 6th graders, and I think they agreed that it would be. Again, we're trying to, our field trip money is sort of pooled, and then you ask for, hey, does this make sense, so that we don't have one group using all of the field trip money. The 7th grade is exceptionally interested in going all kinds of different places, so they already have like or 6 field trips that they want to have planned. Most of them for not very much money. If it's whether to a graveyard, they're going to walk here to Romeo and Juliet, they're going to do some other things. But it is nice to be able to plan for people to get out of the building again and do things together.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Tim?
Yeah, the HHS course, is that just the students that come over here for like advanced math or for languages, or is that a specific course about the high school?
No, it's we have 2 students who come over here for French, and then we have 5 students, I believe, who come over for math, but they're not all in the same math. They may all be this year. Next year, we will have an 8th grader who will be. No. Yeah, I can't remember who they. I just know that
I don't need to know specifics. I just
wildly, accelerated.
Yeah, it just said that there was one section of HHS course, and I thought
Well,
it felt strange to have a course about. Okay.
Yeah. So we have some students who go over for language. They come back every day. That's an everyday course. And then the math courses go 3 days a week at the end of the day. And it's been nice to be able to work with high school to sort of, so we don't have to go and come back. It's basically only a one time.
Thank you.
Ben?
Thanks, Jen. Maybe I missed this, but what was the rationale between having the 1, 2, 3, 4 for the electives only? Is that what, or did you mean it's for everything? It was mentioned electives. So the grading system of a 1, 2, 3, 4. What I heard you say is that it was only for the electives that you have that system.
It's only for the electives right now.
What is the rationale for that?
The rationale for that is that most of the electives were graded pass-fail, other than music and gym. And we thought it would make sense for the non-academic classes to make that move first so that it would be consistent, so that we wouldn't have students who would be like, I get a pass-fail in woodworking, but I get an ABC in my violin class. Those are both non-academic classes. Why can't we make those consistent? To be perfectly honest, it's a move. It's sort of the first idea in a move toward, in middle school, the skills that you need to be successful going forward are not always so closely aligned with an ABC grade. So in other words, we have students who have, so I got an A in this class. Well, you got an A in this class because in 7th grade, we allow students to retake tests when they need to. We allow students to do extra work. We allow students to do, so that may or may not be a good reflection of, in fact, how ready they are to go forward. And in some of the other, and also world languages has already shifted to a non-ABC grading system. So it's based on proficiency grading. So we're trying to move some of our non-core academic classes sort of in that realm of what is proficiency, what is something you're really good at, what is something that you can look to going forward. Hey, I did a really good job in this class.
I guess just to be clear, because I don't have a kid yet in that system, how are the regular academic classes graded?
They're still A, B, C, D.
I see.
Okay. Yeah. The regular academic classes are graded that way all the way through. I think, you get into giant philosophical discussions about what would be effective in terms of middle school for that. And we're not at that point yet to sort of make that discussion. We want to try to correlate students who do well in middle school academic classes, because that's how they then get placed into the high school academic classes. So we want to make sure that that is something that syncs up. But, and I think as we move forward with the curriculum work that Robin is doing about sort of bringing all of that together, we'll have a better idea of, what exactly does an A in 7th grade science mean? Does it mean you're ready to go, or does it just mean that you work really hard? Sort of which one of those things will be helpful going forward. Those are going to be ongoing and long-term discussions, I'm sure.
Some very good academic strategic planning thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we're working on that. But it didn't seem to make sense to us to sort of say that, PE is A, B, C, D, but woodworking is pass-fail, or theater is pass-fail. Like, how does that help? And part of our, theater and woodworking teachers are like, we have students who are there and fine, and then we have students who are doing way above what they could be doing. It would be nice to be able to reward them and say, hey, they're really doing amazing things here. Without having, the other thing is that the elective teachers have a much higher caseload in terms of students. So to try to write comments for all of those students that would reflect that becomes hugely difficult. So academic classes, you teach 80 to 100 students. I mean, Cliff Harriman teaches 220 students. So for him to write very great comments for all of those students would be much more difficult, as opposed to 4, 3. So parents get sort of a good idea of what the students are doing.
Any other comments? I have one question. Do you think you're going to offer cobbling next year?
Cobbling.
Making of shoes?
I knew what cobbling meant. I don't know, actually. What type of shoes are you talking
I don't know, one for the principal?
about? One for the principal? No. No. The principal does not wear shoes. Let's just get that out there right there. And if he does not tie them. So we can get that out there. Right.
Thank you, Tim.
No problem.
So moving on to business requiring discussion. Is Matt here?
Yes.
Doing work over there.
How's everyone doing? Hey.
Thanks for having me. So I was last here in May to report on March Intensive and discuss how things went and to seek your guidance. Today, I'm excited to have presented to you, at least digitally, right, the 15th March Intensive Program Study. So it's an anniversary year, which is exciting. So, one, I want to recognize that it was a lot of work sort of getting to this point. It took the creativity and planning on teachers' parts to sort of think ahead and generate what's really a pretty diverse array of courses. Highlighting some of the numbers, you'll see that there are approximately 715 total spots, and we have an enrollment of 655. So certainly not all of those classes will fill. Some of them will fold, and staff will be reassigned, but there's some sort of room for the market, sort of what students want to drive where that goes. So the biggest sort of allotment of courses, when you add up the full day local courses and the half day courses, it's approximately 500 of the spaces. That is by far sort of the what really March Intensive, I would say, is about, or at least what for the majority of students, it's an experience that takes place either in the school or in the community around us. We're always really proud of the partnerships, and this year, just looking at the list, we've got Habitat for Humanity, Dartmouth Medical School, Cover Home Repair, The Haven, Hypotherm, Cartoon School, Hood Museum, New Hampshire Fish and Game, right, to save a few, so to name a few. So I think that's a sort of a neat feature that we're able to connect with some of that expertise within our community. Looking beyond that, coming off the pandemic, we are looking to get kids out into the world regionally and bringing back distant travel, which had always been a feature in March Intensive. We've got about 104 regional travel slots. Those include things like winter camping in the White Mountains, which has perennially been a really a popular course. There's a jazz history course in New York that Mr. Gold is bringing back based on popular demand. One that we're excited about too is that for the first time we're offering a marine biology class. That year after year, it was a recommendation from students that they wanted to see that, and one of our seniors actually really ran with that and partnered with Ms. Kornfeld, and I think they've put together what's going to be a really exciting class on the seacoast in Cape Cod. And then you'll see that we've got 83 distant travel courses, and those range from Habitat for Humanity in Arkansas. Actually, for the first time ever, we're going to be offering a trip into, of course, pending your approval, a trip to Rwanda, which was the collaboration with a parent who's an assistant dean at the medical school who has been numerous times and really wanted the opportunity. What's incredible about that trip is that he's leveraging some grant funds that he has to keep that at, I think at a price that's really accessible. But they're looking to do some exciting work with youth there, working with sports, and perhaps observing some of the medical mission as well. So yeah, I mean, I think the program of studies is here. It's when March Intensive was created, 16 years ago, I think is when it officially happened, right? It's the 15th year. The board asked then that, each year we come forward with this program of studies that you could look at it. To this point, it's been vetted by 2 other groups. The March Intensive Committee had the first sort of go around on it. We did, remove a few courses to sort of get a better balance in the what was offered in the program of studies. From there, it went to CPP at the high school, and they looked at it and they've endorsed it. And you are the sort of the final stop in that approval process. So I'm here tonight to answer questions and see what you have to say. Okay.
So where do the students' input come from? Is that through, does this get shared with the students?
Well, we have 3 students who are on the March Intensive Committee,
Okay.
and then there are students on CPP as well. So they get to weigh in. I mean, truthfully, we encourage students to participate in sort of generating courses, and you can see there are some courses there where there are designated student leaders where they may have actually been the inspirational creators. They have to then partner with a faculty member, right, to turn that into a course that can be offered. But we do, there's a lot of anticipation of what's going to be released, and it's kind of fun to unveil it all at once as opposed to sort of putting it out piecemeal.
So how do you, I guess, ensure that, like, and I'm picking marine biology because I know you're probably gonna have tons of people.
Yeah.
But let's say the faculty says, "Oh, this is going to be so awesome," and the students are like, "I don't want to go to the Cape and March," and no one signs up.
It happens, and it's one of the reasons why we build in, like, we don't have the number of spots that equal the number of students, and certainly we've anticipated wrong before, and I think there's been a lot of great classes that unfortunately didn't generate student interest. This one, I mean, I'm going to use my years of experience to say that I'm pretty certain it'll be full, but I don't know that for sure. And I will say that one of the challenges that we have is that our hope would be that students would go home, they'd talk it over with their folks, they'd think about what do they need. Because I think all of these courses are great, but I don't think that they're great for every student. It's based on sort of where they are, what they need, what ways could they grow, right? But what students do, I mean, maybe they have those conversations, but then the most important conversation they often have is with their friends. And I think they're a little bit less inclined to take social risks, and they tend to gravitate towards what are you signing up for and what are you, So sometimes that results in what I would consider to be a really good course not running. But then there's always demand for that staff member in another place in the building.
I have a couple questions, but I can ask them one. Well, I will ask them one at a time.
Sure.
At the CPP meeting yesterday, you referenced scholarship money,
Mhm.
and everybody there knew what you were talking about,
Yeah.
except for me. So I figured I would ask tonight. How much money is available in a scholarship pool? Because I know some of these do cost money. And where does that money come from? I assume from us.
Well, I mean, so the board provides $7,500, which we actually don't use for scholarships. What we use for that money for is to offset the cost of courses that have small fees. So you'll notice that there's a number of courses in the program of studies that have no fee for
Right.
students. And what we've done is taken courses that might have had a fee of $50, $60, $70, and we just said, we'll eliminate that fee so that our goal always is to make sure that 50% or more of the total overall spots are at no cost to students. So we use that money for there. The scholarship money actually is privately raised. And so we've had a number of different contributors, right, who have given it, but we've accepted a lot of gifts from the Byrne Foundation over the years, and they've been generous benefactors of the program. So, and that money, just so you know, are aware, so students who qualify for our free and reduced lunch program are told before signups that they can sign up for courses and they don't need to consider what the cost is. We tell them that they can have one of the distant travel categories in their high school career, because truthfully, that's probably what most families are limited to anyway. That accounts usually for close to half of our scholarship dollars. It varies year to year based on where the interests of the students are. And then the other half of the scholarship money gets spent for students who might need some assistance in trying to, bridge the gap between what they're able to do and what it takes to actually go on the trip. But I can say that over the years, we've been able to meet, to our knowledge, all of the needs. In the sense that the students come to us and they've applied for a scholarship. They've never, we'll give them an award, and they might write back, and we'll say in the award letter, if this is not enough, please let us know. And to my knowledge, every student who has applied for a scholarship has eventually had the experience that they were seeking to have.
Second question. So are there faculty and staff who aren't involved in any of these offerings?
No, everyone will be involved in some way, shape, or
So they're
form.
not just sitting
No, I mean, like
grading
we
for a
have,
week.
so we have some staff members, for example, who are a one-on-one aide, and depending on what the needs are of the student, that they may be with the student, but it may be that March intensive, that need's not there, and they may partner in the end. But literally, I mean, there are very few. There's a person in the guidance office, the nurses, some of the administrators. You'll see that lots of the administrators, I think they're always sort of jockeying to participate. It's something that people, I think, want to do. But pretty much everybody in the building is engaged in something. Yeah.
So and my third question is just, do we have UBTI interns at that time of year, and are they?
We have had them. They're not. I don't know who the UBTI interns are. Usually by that point, because they'll come on in January.
Right.
They typically want to be involved, and it's not a question of, we need someone here. It's what is your interest and where would you be, best suited. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondered, in the past, seniors have gone first?
Yes.
And will that continue?
Yeah, so that will continue. So there's always a lot of interest in the lottery, right? And so not typically, what we do is we start with the senior class. We have the computer run a random generator. To be eligible for the lottery, you had to be deemed a successful participant last year, which simply meant that you showed up, you showed good intent, right? And you didn't, skip more than 2 days. And so in that being the case, we'll do all the seniors, we'll do the same thing with the juniors. We used to do registrations try to do it all in 1 day. Now we pause. We will take stock of what we have. We will republish the program of studies and send it out to 9th and 10th graders with what's left for them, and we'll go from there. So I think that student satisfaction level obviously grows, I think, as they progress through the years.
Yeah. I just want to say, I know you put a lot of work into this over the years, and it's a great program. I'll get on my soapbox or the windmills always, and I'm sure what I'm going to add here. Which is, you've got some students sitting in a classroom here doing bracelets, and then you've got some who are supposedly going to spend $2,000 going to Greece or I just don't see the equity. And I know that you say that we've got tuition programs, but I probably wouldn't be coming to ask for money to go on this, but affordability here is not something that and I just don't, we've set limits on the dollar amounts for these trips previously, and to me, $2,000, we've got 8 that are $1,300 to $2,000.
Yeah.
It just, I don't the equity issues there are really hard for me to work with, because I just don't see that, I think it's great that the free and reduced lunch students have the opportunity to apply for this. I think that there are a lot of other people that would need or could use the funds that aren't gonna come to you to ask for these scholarships. And I think that this really is favoring those who can afford these things, and the people who are gonna, who already have access to the funds are the ones who are gonna ask for it, and there's a lot of people in the middle who just aren't going to be doing that. And I just, for me, I think that the programs you've got here, they're close to the community, and getting them to participate in it, fantastic, but I find it hard to rationalize that a lot of these trips. It just doesn't, it doesn't seem right to me. And I'll tack on to that, the one I talked to you about last time, which is the independent travel ones. Because I don't, or independent study, which I really struggle with too. And I know you've got a process to approve of those things, but some of them I don't approve of as well. And I know this is a bit more structured than you've got that laid out what's happening.
I totally hear your concern. I think we share like a common concern. You know, I would say that, you know, one is that these types of experiences that are listed here in the program of studies, they're fairly common experiences right throughout high schools across the United States, in the sense that there's oftentimes, you know, foreign travel trips or trips over breaks. Those I think are more inequitable, because one is they actually tend to be more expensive. I mean, I think the course, if you look at the courses here, and you look at sort of the value versus if you were to contact an educational tour company, I think they've been really creative in trying to make them as accessible as they possibly can. The other things I would say is that they're a little bit of a high estimate. Like, we don't know what some of the costs are going to be, and it's likely that these trips could come in slightly lower or lower than what the price listed there, but we always want to give the high estimate, just because we don't want to come to a family and then say, oh, guess what, we need more money. But I think there's also a phenomenon of, there's a lot of kids, I think, you know, in the middle, for example, whose families, you know, can't envision, you know, a trip to Greece. It's just too much for the whole family to go, right? But one time in their high school career, you know, if it was a priority for the student, right, that they would be able to do that. So it opens up international experiences to students who wouldn't have had them otherwise. And, you know, I think, you know, it is expensive to get out into the world. I think the kids very much value the experience. And I think that Hanover High School, through March Intensive, does a much better job of providing these premium educational experiences to kids from across the economic spectrum, because again, we do it as a part of this program where there is money raised and there are ways to, you know, to help students get there. 2,000 is the cutoff. We did have a couple proposals that exceeded that, and, you know, we said no to those. It's hard to gauge exactly where that number should be, because, you know, inflation is real and travel costs are higher. But we feel like it's really important to help students get out into the world and experience something outside of the Hanover bubble. And you know, I'm convinced that there are, you know, hundreds of students who never would have had the opportunity to travel and to see something different had March Intensive not exist. So, you know, we would love to, you know, have more scholarship dollars available to make sure that we're able to meet that. But I think, you know, a process is there in place to help those students that are willing to ask for it, and we're able to get them experiences that they wouldn't have otherwise. But I, you know, I mean, I think the concern you express is one that, you know, certainly it's one we've heard before and we're aware of, but we feel like rather than staying true to sort of this sort of concept of equity, which is absolutely important, I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm just trying, I think our intent is to try to create experiences for students that wouldn't have them otherwise, and I'm convinced that March Intensive does do that.
So my concern though too is that we don't have good data.
Yeah.
So you send the surveys out to the students. Right? You don't send it out to them.
We haven't always, and I
And there's
remember your
ones who
feedback
are
last year.
paying for this, and they're going to have to come to you for the request for the funding too.
Yeah.
I think we're missing a huge thing if we're not doing it, because I'm a kid.
Yeah.
I want to go on this.
Yeah.
Your parents have to give us
I'll be
their
perfectly honest,
financial
we have,
details
so
to get the scholarship.
I regret that we did not survey parents last year. We have surveyed parents periodically. I'll be honest and say truthfully, it wasn't a great sample of data. We didn't learn tons. I mean, I think the most valuable feedback that we get comes from the students and the experiences that we're having. In student surveys, of course, one of the #1 comments is like, I wish we had more distant travel experiences. And I think there's a lot of interest on the part of students to experience education someplace, outside of but I can assure you,
begrudging you that.
yeah, and this year
They're not
certainly
the
we will,
ones
yeah,
who
have to
pay
yeah.
for it, have to go to the parents who then have to tell them that they can't pay for it.
Yeah.
Or else they have to go and give the school all the financial details to get it.
Well, we don't pry for the financial details, but I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
going back to my first, the independent, can
Yeah.
you walk us through the process of how those get approved?
Yeah, so every year we approve, we have an allotment of, we would say 25 spots. However, students will sometimes apply in small groups, and really the number 25 is generated by the capacity of the individuals to sort of monitor those independent studies, meet with the students and do the planning work, and then the post-experience presentations. So sometimes that number gets slightly adjusted if we have more groups applying, just because it's one meeting and you have, several students there, and so you can adjust the numbers up. The focus in the independent study application isn't the location, it's, what are their learning goals and what are they going to be doing to pursue those learning goals. So we don't consider, for example, the settings, in a sense, for that time period, they are, in the custody of their parents, and so, it's the activity that they're doing. I would say there definitely are people who are traveling during that time, but that's not, in my recollection, the bulk of them. I think last year might have been a little different, but a lot of them were, they're rebuilding cars, they're doing internships or job shadows, but we try to focus in on the learning goals for those. But there's no magic. I will say that most applications too, that they show promise, but that one of the things that our independent study much intensive advisor does for Daily is to meet with the kids regularly to sort of take whatever it is that they came up with in their application and really turn it into an actual plan. And he actually goes, I think he really enjoys it, but he goes above and beyond and sort of trying to really, define what the kids are trying to do and prepare them to have a successful week.
Bear with me, I think I have 3 separate questions.
Sure.
So the first one is to kind of get at Tom's issues, which I fully share with, all appreciating your responses. Is there a way for parents to come to you with financial stuff without the student knowing? I think that might actually get at some of these concerns.
The financial aid application has a parent signature and support line on it. I think that if a parent were to email me, we would certainly respect that request for sort of anonymity and not inform the student, although there would be challenges to do because there's certain, payments that are due and deposits that made, but currently that's not built into the process, I guess I would say, but I think it could very easily be.
Especially if you're hyping the fact that we've never turned anyone down. You might have more parents be willing to sort of, I want my kid to go on this trip, but my kid thinks it's easy, and for some reason I want them to think that, yes, we can handle this or not.
Yeah.
That kind of structure might help.
I would say the one thing that's would be hard in that is that one of the things we want to know, we don't try to pry into what the hardship is, but we want to understand, why are you motivated to take this course, right? And so we want to know that a student is, if it's a free chance to go to this or there, right? But we want to see that there's a compelling reason, to some degree they can express a reason why they want to do it. So I think having the student participate in the application process, to me, that's important, just because they give a rationale about why it's important to them to have this experience.
The second one is, some of these details on the travel issue actually explicitly say this includes airfare, lodging, or others don't.
Yeah.
Is there standardized?
There
language
could
that
be
we all should
uniform. We've talked with all the trip leaders. They know that it's from the moment you leave Hanover until you are back. There are a few cases where maybe an incidental, like a smaller, like a lunch or something, maybe it's like, they're in a town, they have some opportunity to sort of walk around. But I will say that if a student is on a scholarship and they're on that trip, we make an inquiry to find out if there are, what I would describe as small unaccounted for costs that those are taken care of. And typically what we do is that we give a cash stipend that the chaperone can then dispense to the student to cover those costs.
Confirm, I think, what the last one is. These questions, as several have mentioned, are actually kind of the same.
Sure.
Over the years, we ask you the same questions, the same responses. Is a reminder to you that we only see the list of courses. And if you could include sort of like an FAQ each year, that would help to get out, like, how is it funded? Who pays for this? What's the lottery system?
Yeah, I guess you guys
That would probably make
turn
it
over.
easier for you and for us to see that in the same document.
Sure. That's a great suggestion. It's something we can definitely do moving forward.
Kim?
I actually already answered my question.
You answered your own
I
question?
answered my own question, yes, so I am good.
I was just gonna say that one of the things that we came up with this year, and I'm not that much a big program, but one of the things that we're gonna try to do this year with New York and the Montreal trips is once we get an idea as to who can go, we're gonna send out a Google form to the parents to say, this is what it would cost. Would you be willing to sponsor someone else? Because we do have a number of parents in this community who are like, yeah, I can send my student, and I would love the capability to put forward a certain amount of money so that someone else can do it. Just so that we can try to tap into that. Otherwise people are like, yeah, I sent my student there, and either they didn't know or they didn't know how to access it, or feel like, hey, and Jamie, if we have the trip that's under $1,000, then we should accept that without having to get those approved. So, hey, I'd like to do it. I'd like to sponsor somebody else to go on a trip. That might be a way.
It happens. Yeah, like I'm also the Model UN advisor, and we go to 2 or 3 conferences a year, and they carry a price tag of anywhere from $500 to $600, and oftentimes it's other parents will indicate a willingness to cover those expenses. So, and we do get contributions from beyond the Burn Foundation too as well to support this.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Prince. In May, we had discussed possibly creating a fund for students who wanted to pursue independent study options but had some kind of financial barrier. Have you looked into that at all?
Yeah, I think it would be a nice thing to be able to do. I think that, for us, the priority in March Intensive is the group experience, because I think that a lot of what comes out of it is the sense of community, right, that's generated by a shared experience on a common interest. So all that's, I think it's a good suggestion, and if our the balance in our account were to get bigger, it's something we might consider. But it would also there'd be some complications with that. But it's nothing that's imminent. It's an idea that's been logged at least.
Any other comments?
I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and like Tom, I do every year. This year, it's a little bit of a different lens in the sense that we just finished up draft of an equity policy for SAU, and part of me thinks that while that policy took, it took almost a year to come up with that policy. I actually think that was the easy part. I think the hard part for the district is the application of the policy once it's adopted by the school district. And March Intensive rises as one of those things that I really reflect on when I look at the equity piece of things, but it's not the only thing. There are other things in our school district that can point towards equity. I could look at the athletic advisory fee as another one, right? We went through an exercise under the previous principal just to tally up the total amount of costs that we ask our parents to contribute. And, from an equity lens, really, what would it take to fold that stuff into the school budget, right? Because one of the things that we could look at for this is, if these collectively, if the cost of these March intensives is something the district values, then maybe it really ought to be funded directly out of the budget and not require parents or friends of parents or other people to help contribute to the cost of this stuff, if that's what we as a school district value. But we never seem to get anywhere in that conversation, right? And my hope is that if the district is serious about equity, and we're going to adopt the policy, at least in large measure, as to what was presented to this body, we've got some conversations that we need to have as to what does that mean for the application of the school district. I'm at the point where I'm not sure I can support this at this point. The March intensive slate as proposed.
Jen?
I would say I struggle with it too, and I come back to, having spoken with students in the past who will say exactly what Matt just mentioned, that, this was their only chance to get abroad. So I struggle with it as well for the same reasons, and every year I have those same concerns. I will say though, to your point, when I look at the Ray School not doing Halloween costumes because of equity, and then we have this, at the high school, I think there is sort of a double, it's not consistent, right? So I think there's definitely some conversations to be had there and some work to be done, and I share the concerns.
Can I just, if I may? So I hear all of this, and I'm someone who would say that like equity is something that we should be looking at, and quite frankly, the idea of potentially more funding from the school to help make sure all kids can have these types of experience, something obviously I would welcome. Through March Intensive, I cannot tell you how many times I've had the experience of sitting on a plane with a kid, and it's their very first time that they've been able to fly. And these types of experiences, they're going to exist. They will get moved to April break and February break, and there will not be the funding, and students with privilege will still have these experiences. They'll go with their family, but March Intensive is the way that middle class and kids from lower socioeconomic classes get exposed to these types of experience. So if you take it away, I understand the sort of the philosophic rationale that would drive that, but I think the group that you would be harming the most would be those kids. I think the March Intensive Committee too would be, open to adjusting the program. We've seen that we can do it, and have a good experiences without it, although kids certainly want it and, consistently requested to have it back. But I would say, the time for those types of conversations is in May, when we're coming back and we're seeking feedback and we're setting up. At this particular point in time, we can pull these things, but it will create, we'll have, a bunch of open slots that'll be there. It wouldn't be clear to me, does that include the regional travel ones too as well? So it's obviously, you're the board and you get to make these, tough calls, but I would really urge you to think about some of the kids who may not have these experiences if March Intensive doesn't have it.
Lisa?
A comment and then a question. 40 years ago, almost exactly, I was one of those lower income kids who got to go somewhere because there was a high school trip offered by my English teacher that let me do that. And I'm forever appreciative of that experience. It's the only way that I got to go abroad as a teenager. That said, as a parent who is not among the wealthier families in this area, it is hard, as Tom pointed out, to be one of those people that my kid will probably, might want to go on one of these distant travel things. And it is difficult to be put in the position of saying, I don't know if we can do that. And so it feels as if there should be a process that is more open to, we talk all the time about students in the middle who don't get the services. Like we do well with the kids who need services at the lower end, and we do well with the kids who are high achievers, and we sort of miss the middle. And I think we also do that with the middle of the parents here. And it is just a really awkward it's just an awkward position to have in this community, to be someone who is just kind of average. And so I just would really encourage the March Intensive Committee to do something that just makes it an easier process to apply for money. And maybe that is, as Neil says, we fund this fully, but then I think everyone's going to want to go on a long distance trip, and then the budget grows. So there's problems there. My next question is, I don't know when the dates for this are, but it feels as if March Intensive is always in a time for those athletes who are in winter sports who might have playoffs. I know the hockey team in the past has not been able to go because they always hope that they're going to make the playoffs. And so I just am wondering how that works.
I think we've heard from Megan that we always try to time it for in between seasons. The seasons don't always end at the same time. And I would say that, part of that motivation is to sort of hit that window between sports seasons. But the other motivation is that March is a long month in New England, right? Winter has really set in. I think if we were to this is sort of anecdotal, but if we were tracking sort of student mental health and sort of, staff enthusiasm, March is a slog, right? And so having something different, having a total different change in approach is really beneficial. It's also nice in that there's still a good chunk of the year left. So the relationships that get formed in March Intensive, right? There's some carryover, right? Like into the building as well. But I just, to your earlier point, part of my motivation to, having someone who's led a number of distant travel trips was that for me, this was my path to travel as a young person. I worked at the Hanover, I went to Hanover High School, for those who know, but I worked at the Hanover Inn as a bellhop to fund a trip to Costa Rica. It wasn't during March Intensive, it was one that sort of straddled an April break. But as a result of that trip, I ended up being a Latin American Studies major in college, right? And if there hadn't been a school trip, 'cause my family did not have the resources at that time to travel all of us to Costa Rica, but I wanted it badly, and so I contributed some to it, right? And I mean, I guess I was fortunate that I didn't have to use the money I earned, right, to pay living expenses and things like that. It was my money, I could do with it as I wanted, but I was able to get there, right? And that was without, financial assistance. So to me, it's my motivation. I've had, and I can't, the number of times that I've gotten that it's an incredibly joyful thing to get a kid out of the Upper Valley for literally the very first time. It's exciting, and it's a big part of the reason why I want to continue to do that.
We'll have two more comments, Julie, and then
I want one more.
There's no negotiating.
I welcome the conversations that Neil is talking about. I think at this moment, it would be a bizarre surgical maneuver to say, we fixed March Intensive, we fixed it all. I think the board should have those conversations. I think we should talk about athletics and just twins. Who has to pay for 3 sports seasons for both of them the whole way through high school? That's a huge feat. Model UN trips, French 5 trip that goes to Quebec City. Parents write checks for that, right? Calculators that they're supposed to have in certain math classes. Parents go and buy those. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we need to talk about. I think to feel like we surgically say, this is the thing we're going to deal with, and pat ourselves on the back that we dealt with equity is just, it's false. There are a lot of equity issues. They need to be dealt with. I think you should figure out a plan, do it in a systematic fashion, but to just suddenly sort of do this. I think the committee, if we're part of an equity situation, could come up with, I mean, we ran March Intensive through COVID. No one went anywhere. People had great experiences. I was on e-bikes with kids riding around the Upper Valley. It was fun. Like, we can do it, but there's other things that we've used March Intensive for in the past to meet certain goals. We think that's still part of the program. If you want us to cut that out of the program, that's fine, but I would do it in a more systematic fashion, because I think it'll be a feel-good moment for a second, but then not address all of those other things. And I would just like to see what the plan is to address those. If there's an equity committee that has come up with the policy, then how is it coming out? Not just suddenly today, we're gonna meet the equity committee's policy with March Intensive. That just seems arbitrary to me.
So that's the point I wanted to address, is that specific one.
I think we all like I do too.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Tom.
It's the surgical, so I respect. But I've been on the board 10 years. I think I brought this up every single time. And you tell us, it was May that it was the time to bring it to you. I did talk to you about it tonight. It's that level of frustration that I have, is that I have brought it every single year. And granted, I haven't been the one to call it because I haven't done it, but I also haven't known when the process has taken place in May. And board members haven't been included, parents haven't been included in that process planning at that stage. So it comes to this, and then you say it's a surgical thing, this is what we're jumping on. I've jumped on this every single year I've been on the board for 10 years. We limited the high amount, I believe, to $700 for a couple of years, because if it gotten to this $1,500, $2,000 level. And it's not surgical. I've studied this for 10 years, and I just don't think, I think I agree with what you're talking about, but I think it's crazy that the public school has $2,000 programs that it's got to be there in the budget. It's got to be.
So I'm going back and forth on this, as I clarified, where to Tom's point about the time period. I led an academic subcommittee meeting this afternoon, where some of us are in the room, and there was a thing said, oh yeah, we've known about this for 12 years, we've been working on it, and progress is coming. And kind of that same thing between, like, especially those who are parents now, is that we can't keep waiting on stuff. We keep saying, oh yeah, we're working on that now, slowly but surely. I empathize with Neil completely that sometimes we have to do stuff, but I also empathize with Julie that, like, if we just randomly said no to March Intensive right now, even with the long horizon of coming, I'd still be hard on the present students. And looking at these costs, which are granted, they're expensive, but looking at what you get for that money seems astonishingly cheap. And I'm like you and Lisa, where when I was a kid, I was very modest means, and the only time I've traveled, I think even to this day, has only been internationally, has only been to subsidized school trips. That I think I paid more in 2001 to go on a shorter trip that was subsidized by school than what you're offering here. So I think the prices themselves seem fantastic. But these underlying issues still make me uncertain. Now, if it came to a vote, I think I would say, let's have these conversations a lot faster than what we've been doing. Or I think by the time you come in May, I want to have a set plan for what exactly are we going to be doing moving forward. But I also want to give the students this year to have that opportunity.
I haven't been a member of the board for a long time. I was here in May when we had this discussion. And just, I have to say that, Tom, I understand you've raised these concerns, but I don't remember board action authorizing a discussion of this or saying we need to do this, or the board wants to be a part of, or the board's going to take this up. So although you've raised it, I don't think there's been board action, demanding that they change the way they're organizing it.
Well, it wasn't that we limited the value
previously, yeah. So, but I mean, this year it seems like they've been responsive to their remit, what they're supposed to do. So my view is, if we're going to change it, don't take away 100 spots, 70 spots for international travel now, and leave the March intensive program with a hole to fill and students not getting their options. We address it.
So I'm going to bring that up after everyone's done commenting.
Yeah, so I would say, there was a particular reason why when I gave my last remarks, my focus was on the chair and the board and not on the March Intensive Committee, because I'm not here to fault what these guys did, right? The discussion that needs to happen is of this body, to what Tony just brought up. I will say that whether I vote for or against this slate of courses tonight, I will leave here neither feeling satisfied that I sent a message or dissatisfied that I think somehow I'm contributing to an inequity. This is a difficult situation. I don't see this, I'm not going to leave happy thinking that I made some sort of surgical cut and then walk home and go to sleep thinking everything is solved for the next year, right? I do think, to Tony's point, we need to have a discussion on the board about this, and I'm looking at the chair to see if we can organize somehow that happens.
And that's what I was gonna say at the very end of all the comments. So the question though is, where is this an ad hoc committee, or is this in the budget committee, or is this in the curriculum committee, or policy, I don't, or the equity? I don't, where do we want to have this discussion? I'm agnostic.
I think that you're gonna find that it's got tentacles into all of those things that you
So
just
we have an
mentioned.
ad hoc committee?
And I think, yeah, probably an ad hoc committee, knowing that you're probably gonna need, representation from all of those areas, because this, I mean, we attempted to do this before when there was a year that I asked Justin to come back and tell me what would it cost if we were going to fund through taxation all of the initiatives, and that number was large.
Yeah.
I mean, I sit
Yeah.
here tonight, right, if I calculate the total number, and this is just the travel trips, right, we're looking at $140,000.
170.
So do we have those, we know what all the different programs, from
We did it at the high school, I don't
athletics
know.
to,
Elementary schools, did it?
what's that?
We did it at the high school. I don't know if, like, I wrote a lot of checks to Marion Cross for apathy and this and that. I don't know if someone did it for the other schools, but we definitely did it for the high school.
So that's the other thing, is this an SAU issue if we're gonna do it?
I would argue yes, because I just put forward an SAU equity policy for consideration.
I agree.
Lisa?
We'll do it.
No, I think there may be a need to have subcommittees at each of the school boards with SAU kind of gathering the information. We can have the subcommittees feeding what all the costs of the programs are, and then do an analysis to figure out what this is gonna mean to the bottom line. Jake?
What's a Dresden?
Well, program. No, but we're talking about.
We're talking a bigger picture.
Like Julian is saying, there's field trips everywhere, I don't know what Marion Cross is charging for trips, or are they required to buy their own school supplies and? Yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out too, is I would love to know if our faculty and staff are using their own money to buy stuff for the classrooms, where I've never understood why that is allowed, No,
I can tell you.
Well, I know, because we can get away with it, but I'm just saying, I don't think that's fair to any of our employees, that they are to create a robust program. They're using their own dollars to go to Staples and Walmart and. Yeah.
Doing the purchase
Paper,
request.
okay.
It's $12, just, that's.
So hold on, so Neil, go ahead.
Sorry.
I would just say, I think the SAU is the appropriate location for the committee, and I think all of the details that you just talked about need to get hashed out in that committee upon creation.
Here.
I've said this before, I mean, we have to be careful about careful what we're asking for here, because equity is going to create major issues. Having sat on even the Student Athletic Advisory Committee and starting to think about things like how this might look and how all the teams are funded, and I just warn you guys that you need to be awfully careful about just saying, hey, because of equity, we're either going to cut everything or going to put it all into the budget, because there needs to be something outside the box here, and I've been saying this, whether it's some sort of, private fundraising that's done for people that are in the schools, where there's a better system as far as, hey, at the holidays, if someone's got some extra money, make a donation to Marion Cross or whatnot to fund some of these things. And yes, that money should be used equitably, but I'm telling you, you start opening up this can of worms, and a lot of this stuff around the school district is hanging on with a shoestring, right? As far as, look at the rowing program and all this stuff, and everyone's like, oh, let's just start funding it with the school budget. That's gonna be an extra $500,000 to your budget, right? I mean, votes $50,000, right? You don't just all of a sudden make these brash decisions for equity, because it's gonna be really tough. So, I think the committee probably does need to be made, but it's not just gonna be like a snap of the finger and let's fix this. In order to run a program like this, some of our sports programs, now that I've got kids involved in this, it's a lot of money to run stuff. And you look at what other schools are doing, and Exeter shows up on a private charter bus up here, and not doing that. We're sending our kids on these old ratty school buses for 2-hour rides. I mean.
Well, some of the teams are.
I was gonna say, some
of the
teams
teams
are
are.
not.
There's a lot of this stuff that needs to be, these are big problems that aren't gonna be
Yeah.
like hacked and whacked over like a couple nights of budget.
But I think because we had, obviously, we haven't had any field trips for, sorry. We haven't had any field trips for 2 years, so we had the field trips that came up for New York. And Quebec, we basically said, we have some students who don't take language. We can't only offer those to certain people. If we're going to offer things to everyone, or if we're going to require it, and I think that's the difference. Like, what is the March intensive? Like, if you were like, yeah, I'm out, I can't pay for it. That's different than, here is an opportunity that we're trying to offer to everyone, that we will try to make sure that we can make equitable, but also to give people a choice to say, hey, I don't want to go here or there. I'd rather do something else. I don't know how you juggle that, but I think from what Garrett is saying, like, we don't, to try to open up everything to everybody is not going to work. But to say, hey, we have these things that are an opportunity, and we should try to make those opportunities somewhat equitable, so that, yeah, everybody is riding on the same bus, or everybody is wearing maybe uniforms that are not bought this year but are 7 years old, or whatever else it is. Those things would make things more equitable. So maybe there's a trip for whoever is in the drama club, parent who has 2 kids who are drama geeks, to go somewhere that's not, to the state championship for football. We probably need to have those are ongoing conversations. But we definitely had this discussion at the middle school in terms of, we can't just do this for certain people. We have to make sure that this is an opportunity that makes sense for all of our students to do. All of our students, meaning not 6th, 7th, and 8th. 8th graders are different than 6th, 7th graders.
Thank you, Tim. Jay?
I can't help it. I just want us to be mindful as we have this conversation about what this would sound like to some other district. When we think about equity, I want to make sure we're not just thinking about equity internally, because equity is much larger than that. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Matt. I think it's a really important conversation. And I think, Jamie?
Yeah, no, as I sit and listen, because I do, and, a few folks have said, what does March intensive cost look like? Well, I've been here 7 years, and 2 of them were back because of COVID. So last year we were in about the $120,000 all-in range. Keeping in mind that, some of the courses are absolutely very minuscule costs.
You're talking about the school cost, the school district cost.
No, I'm talking about the whole program. Total
Okay,
cost.
thank you.
And then I've seen years as high as 218 when we were going to Kosovo, we were going to, when I first got here, there was a lot of trips, okay? Yeah.
225,000 in 2018.
What's that?
225,000
Yes.
in 2018.
Yeah.
This was the answer
I was
answered
myself. So, and it's interesting to listen, and I haven't worked with a lot of school districts, but I do work with a lot of BAs. And there are many, many schools that have fees for not only participating in sports and going on trips, right? And the kids actually get out and fundraise in order to pay for trips, right? And these are other schools that have much higher free and reduced numbers in it, okay? My own district, where I pay taxes, we're 50% free and reduced. And people pay to go on trips, or they organize in order to raise money. And other school districts charge for transportation, so just keep in mind that we're not different, I guess, is what my point is, than other school districts. And maybe we want to be, and we want to set that bar differently, and that's okay. But these are challenges that many other school districts face with okaying, trips for foreign languages and trips for certain special types of learning opportunities. So, but I applaud you in having that conversation.
Any other comments or questions? So I guess an action item, Lisa.
Write it down.
You'll get with the 4 chairs.
Yep. Next 4 chair meeting, we'll figure it out.
So where do we stand with the?
Well, we asked that was
You want an
discussion.
answer?
That is discussion. We'll move on to requiring action in a few minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Annual Trustees of the Trust Fund Letter. We discussed this at Hanover, right? Did you guys discuss it at Norwich?
They don't have it.
They don't have
we don't
it,
have
so-
it, 'cause it's a Hanover.
I didn't think so. So,
It's only a Hanover phenomenon.
Kim gave us a really quick synopsis. Do you want to do that again?
Do it again? So the Trustees of the Trust Fund, what they do is they're basically a body of citizens who provide oversight and management of our trust funds, both in the town and of the schools. Dresden, it's interesting. So we would often think of reserve funds and other funds like that would be, sort of under the purview of this trustee of the trust fund. Again, Dresden doesn't have reserve funds, but they do have actually some funds that are Dresden related, but they're mostly our donor, kind of donation, private donor funds actually go to the trustee of the trust fund. If we ever want to have them come and present, they have presented at the Hanover School Board meeting, which has actually been really helpful. We learned that we were able to kind of use our Bridgman funds in different ways that I think we had self-selected to be more restrictive than we could have. So we learned, things. So, there's benefits to that. I think in the Dresden forum, I would say there's just not a lot to look at because we don't really have reserve funds like we would in other municipalities and school districts. So I would say thank you for posting, but maybe it's more relevant for a Hanover School Board.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for Kim? Moving on to the high school annual quality indicator report.
So last year we had Tom Everhart come and he did a profile and he said, what does anybody else want to see for quality indicators? And we didn't really get much response. And so we just put the profile in there again. I don't think it's necessarily a great quality indicator, but that's what we have. What I would love to offer up maybe in the spring, we're going to have a NEASC report that we're going to have written, and that'll tell you what we think we're doing well at and what we're not, according to the NEASC standards, which are our accrediting board. So reading that might be good this year in terms of a quality indicator to see where we are, but this is what we have for now. And if anyone wants me to gather other information.
So one thing, I would put the Blue Ribbon Award on there. So.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when my kids were applying for colleges, they shared these with their colleges.
Yeah.
Is this used anywhere else other than
Not
college
really.
applications?
Not really.
No.
Yeah.
How about other sending school districts?
I could ask Tom. I don't know if they take this with them. They have a little packet of all the information on Hanover High School that they have in folders that they give to sending schools. But
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I was trying to pull up my notes from this. I think this is the first year that we have listed students that are doing for the matriculation list. I just was wondering if there was a reason for that, just because I think in other years, so and not only that, but it seems like they're tabulated not necessarily in a consolidated year, or like I would imagine post-grad year and gap year are similar.
right.
And that they're disconnected, and there's a separate one listed for travel, which I would maybe also guess is a gap year. I just,
Right.
my recommendation would probably be just to
So combine all those.
or just, I don't know the benefit of this, because I think
Right.
this is often given right to colleges.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the benefit of that is. Maybe you can tell me, but it hasn't been in there in the past, and I noticed it this time.
I can't tell you, but I can ask, right, and then can give a suggestion.
Well, I think they're trying to answer the question of the pie chart.
I understand what they're saying, and I think workforce is 7. So I think it's like these gap years, travel, post-grad year, and workforce. I think those are the categories that are new.
Right.
And right, so this is like a marketing material for colleges, right? And I want to put us, I'm just trying to figure out our audience, right? And making sure the document is focused on that. And, I just want us to.
The matriculation list, then I would think it's just at 90%.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers should just be 90% of the class.
Right.
Any other comments?
Oh, yeah.
Ben?
Clarification question on the master's degree thing.
Yes.
The 62% and the 23% on the first page.
Yeah, of our staff.
Is the 23% in addition to the 62%, or is that a percentage of the 62%?
Contracts in addition to.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, so that we have people who have master's degrees, and then the master's plus 60 would be where they are on the scale, so that would be in addition to, so 62% have a master's, and then the 23% of us who have more than that.
And then 15% don't have masters.
Right.
Jared? Oh, sorry, Kim, she's so quiet.
No, it was a follow-up because in addition to the list, there's a 5 said no information provided, and I was just, maybe it's just people haven't talked to each other. I would imagine we would know where all of our students are post-graduation.
So it depends on what they share with us, and some students either don't share or they don't get back to us, so we don't know.
Okay, so our guidance officers don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
And I do know there's, I don't know if this last year, but the year before, there was a couple kids that went enlisted in the military,
Yes,
and that's not listed here, so
right,
maybe
and we
that's.
will have again. Okay, no, but that, I think
So, but
that's
if,
good
yeah, but if
information to have.
Garrett points out, if there's a matriculation list, then we just remove all those. that
Yeah.
are-
I'm gonna take that back, though, 'cause I'm kind of like, this whole thing is like so dated, right? I mean, who cares that 90% of our class is going to 4-year colleges? I mean, if 7 kids are doing a gap year, it might be better off than if kids just going to Dartmouth.
You're doing
I'm just being honest.
Right, no, I'm with
If it's 7 kids that are taking gap years, it's probably worth leaving those
Oh,
kids
it
in
is.
there.
Yeah.
Parent of 2.
I'd probably
Yeah,
actually
none of those.
leave it, and I'm gonna say that I think that you should probably have the entire graduating class represented in the numbers here. And maybe change, like, instead of matriculation list, it's like,
Post-graduation plans.
Post-graduate activity, or I
Yeah.
don't know, something like
Right.
that. So you list their colleges and what they're doing. Some are working,
Right.
Yeah,
some are taking a gap
Some are
year, some are
military.
traveling, some are going to military, like,
yeah,
that's all kind of
Which
odd.
validates our
Yeah.
students' experiences.
Yeah.
Because the kids that took a gap year, it's not necessarily that they decided not to go to
Right.
college.
Which they couldn't have.
Taking a gap year.
right,
Or the ones that want to work.
right.
And is it just 4-year, or what about, is it because no one's going to a 2-year, or is it just like an old thing that only your moms do?
Oh.
No, I mean, like, I don't know anyone, like, are there even 2-year colleges anymore?
I would
Oh,
have
yes.
to, there are, and I would have to check, but I'm thinking that most likely there was no one who did the 2-year.
Well, I think there's a James Madison University / Blue Ridge Community College. I would imagine maybe that's a 2-year that goes to a 4-year.
Right.
Maybe you're attending or scheduled to attend college instead of 4-year college.
Right. Yep. I can make that
Yes,
down.
or strike the 2-year comment. I don't really know what's 2-year versus 4-year, like.
I don't know who's taking notes, but maybe they'll put it up.
My
They'll
son
do the
is on a
strike.
6-year program.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Lisa,
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I was wondering why the red box about COVID is in there. Is that just because these kids were affected by COVID still?
Yeah.
And so like
Well,
2
and
years
so
from
our
now, that'll go off?
So the
Okay.
seniors this year still have their GPA impacted by a pass-fail semester.
Right, okay.
And so that's in there for,
So it'll eventually,
and eventually the
will
COVID thing
drift
will go
off.
away.
okay,
But
thank
it's
you.
supposed to, and then the staff, and Deb knows this because she was in this discussion yesterday or Monday maybe. sorry. For
That was
CPT.
yesterday.
Was it yesterday? Yesterday was Monday. Okay, so I was like, it's Friday.
It's almost tomorrow.
But in that conversation, we talked about pass-fail being talked about in here, and because our staff wants an explanation of pass-fail in something that goes to the outside world.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we choose to do that for family reasons, and sometimes students choose to do that to take a risk.
Okay.
And so that would be something that I think you might see next year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything, Ben?
What's the difference between gap year, travel, and post-grad year?
I think that was
that's
the,
what-
yeah.
Yeah, that, she brought that up.
Yeah.
So,
So I'll take this stuff back. If people think of for next year, ahead to next year, of beyond the NEASC report, which we can provide, if there's something else you would want, I'll keep thinking. There are many different quality things that are happening that are obviously not captured in this document. So it's just hard to figure out what to do. I'll keep wrapping my brain around it, but.
maybe interesting, and it's in there, some kind of like demographic description of it, that we're a rural, small high school, just to kind of, that we are kind of unique when you're talking about a Wellesley or outskirts of Boston, that we are actually, in the middle of nowhere.
Right next to one of the.
Well, we don't have to say that.
The largest hospital in New England,
But it feels like the middle of nowhere most of
I think instead of Rick writing this, we should probably maybe think of a professional marketing firm.
Thank you. Moving on to reading of the policies.
It's just like gone.
So Jay, I'm a little confused on the policies because these aren't the same as the SAU ones. So why is BBBE in here as a second reading? We just did a first reading of it. Like IFA is here.
There should be time between them is what you're suggesting, correct?
No, but I mean, shouldn't there be a couple other more on here that just had a second reading at SAU? GCO and.
Well, no, because you're assuming that they would pass at SAU. So we don't do that, we would bring them the next time.
After that.
So
These are both discussed earlier.
these are discussed. Does anyone have any questions or comments about these two policies? No. Moving on. So tuition discussion, Kari and Kim, your proposed,
Sorry, can I go back? It actually makes no sense for Dresden to adopt BBBE.
Because we don't have.
it's an SAU 70.
It's neither.
It's neither.
It's
It's
individual
Hanover,
Norwich and
Norwich.
It's Norwich and
Hanover. It
Hanover.
makes no sense for, I mean, no harm done if it is adopted, but no need for it either.
Policies we don't need, I suppose.
I'll say that again. So the
There's no harm in adopting it, but there's definitely no need for it either because we don't fill
No,
vacancies in
that's
Dresden.
right, we're not elected to Dresden.
Right.
So let's go ahead and remove that one from requiring action. Or does anyone not agree? Okay. Tuition discussion.
Yeah, so I'll kick off. I know we actually talked about tuition, so kind of if we remember our discussion, which made me feel like a year ago as opposed to a month ago, given the length of this meeting, we've been seeing our tuition numbers decline, and maybe more importantly, our tuition dollars, right, that are really just that decline, and it's negatively affected our budget. We've been able to manage, but I think it's just an area that we should kind of take a closer look at, kind of understand the formula, making sure that it is properly reflects the costs of attending Hanover High and RMS. We have tuitions at those schools. in Dresden. And so I think it's kind of warrants a tuition discussion. We also have to keep in mind that our formula, kind of includes some of the debt that we'll be rolling off. So it kind of just makes sense to kind of do a little look and see what's going on with tuition, and have a kind of an ad hoc focused discussion on tuition. I would also say that the Hanover Finance Committee has also separately looked at this, and has presented a lot of data, which I anticipate, if Kari has any comments, I'm sure she can speak up first, and for the rest of the Finance Committee. But I anticipate maybe the first meeting, the Finance Committee can come and present to this ad hoc committee kind of what has been worked to date.
So is this similar to the sixth grade discussion, a group that we put together 2 years ago?
Yeah, so I want us to also reflect, so we have some tuition contracts, that we negotiate, with others, and some of those are sunsetting. They were like long 10-year, plus contracts that will be sunsetting in 2025. It's just a kind of a time to reflect if these formulas make sense, and just refresh the math basically.
Just wondering if this committee would also discuss marketing of our services to other districts.
Yeah, so I think, I think we've had differing levels of outreach, right? So that could be a recommendation.
I would suggest that it would.
A recommendation that this committee would bring to Dresden.
Yeah. Okay, so is there action right now, or do we just say we're going to basically set up another ad hoc committee
on tuition, and I'm happy to
that resides in Dresden? Kim will be the chair, and I'll be on the committee.
We'll determine at the first meeting.
Okay, so I'll help with the marketing part, not with the financial formula part.
So is anyone interested in joining the initial committee to do the financial stuff? Lisa, Tony? And then,
there is the possibility for tuition in at grade, as low as that is, it is a possibility. So should that be an SAU board rather than a Dresden board?
Yeah, so I think I'm on the favor of, let's make this just a Dresden, because we have more tuition students and we have these existing, kind of contracts that we can kind of look at. I think we may get one to four tuition students at a time at Ray. I mean, I just don't think it's.
Does Marion Cross get them?
I feel like our core services, like we just discussed today, right, about French 1 and sending districts and the services we provide. I know Jamie presented at our last meeting about busing and how we have one bus to bus 2 kids from Heartland that sometimes take the bus and sometimes don't. I think these are kind of, when we think about our services that we offer, like what's included, what's not, I think this needs to be, and I think a lot of that is in just Dresden, so that's where the localization is.
Okay, so.
Nice try.
We'll go ahead and start it up, and then we'll, I guess, have a meeting in the next week or two to kick off and decide who else from the community and other organizations should be.
I don't have a
No.
proposal on who.
Okay. Sounds good, thank you. Moving on to business requiring action. So I am assuming that we probably should break out the March intensive, because there may be some dissent there, so. No. Jay, did you remove the BBD?
He did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yep,
so we're
that's
just
fine.
approving a policy. So does someone want to make a motion for consent for items B through E? Okay.
Move to approve items B through E by consent.
Second, Deb, all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed. Okay, moving on to.
And Marcella and Lily are gone. Yeah.
Marcella said she was going to join on Zoom, and she's not.
March intensive, does someone want to make a motion to approve the March intensive? Kim,
Move to approve the March intensive program as presented.
second, Lisa. Any discussion?
Had a lot of that.
So all those in favor of approving the March intensive as presented, raise your hand. All opposed? Raise your hand. Any abstentions? One. Great. Moving on to reports and communications, report of the chair. I don't have any update. I have asked Jay going forward that if we can have, well, I don't know if you're even gonna do it, but in your superintendent report going forward, we'd love to have a running total of amount of time and money spent on all these right to know requests. Just so our taxpayers know the amount of effort and time that is being spent on those, which is taking away from other initiatives within our school districts.
So that's quickly, how many are ongoing?
We just had one recently, which was really a continuation of the prior ones. I think I finally put it to bed.
Can I have a question on that?
Yes.
Lawsuits, are those things that we can discuss in public or not?
If they're filed publicly, yes.
Okay.
So,
Well,
Okay.
I mean, it depends. Like if we're working with an attorney on a lawsuit, we definitely don't want to discuss it publicly.
no, but the fact that we're either filing a lawsuit or being sued, that's
Right.
public knowledge. We can talk about it. We can't probably talk about the strategy or the.
What are we gonna say tomorrow? Thank you, Rick, for that clarification.
Don't think we're being sued right now.
Okay, so that's all I have to report.
Just that from a cost standpoint, that's all.
Oh, the cost of lawsuits?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
public knowledge.
thank
That's in
you.
our budget, so it's in our.
Payable.
Thank you, public.
Committee reports. Anyone have a committee report? Moving on to superintendent's report.
All right, thanks. You kind of gave me a new thing to talk about, but I had a report prepared. I just wanted to have my congratulations to council on 50th anniversary. It was a great presentation, and it's really a testament to the value that our community places on the democratic process. And the fact that it's been an ongoing concern for 50 years really shows that it's become an institution more than simply a part of our governance. It's really been institutionalized. One of the things I wanted to talk about in my report tonight is staffing. We continue to suffer the same shortage that a lot of our peer districts are facing, especially with regard to support staff. And the stress that that puts on the overall system is a lot like what we described last year, where we thought that last year was probably the toughest of the COVID years, primarily because we had people staying home, and when we have people stay home, we need to provide substitutes. There aren't any substitutes, so we're covering internally. And it just ramps up the level of stress and wears people down over time. When they normally would have a prep period, they're covering somebody else's class. It's just definitely a stress on the system. So we're lucky here. We don't have a lot of unfilled certified teacher positions. We have at the Ray School, we've got a couple of specialist positions that are still open. There's a literacy specialist and a math specialist that's not filled. We have a couple of elective part-time positions, and we have a long-term sub opening that's a full FTE. But where we're really hurting is we have 27 vacancies for ed assistants. And the bulk of those are at the Ray School. We have 5 open positions at the high school, 5 at the middle school, 2 at MCS, and we have 7 unfilled custodial positions. So it just puts a big burden on the system, and we keep, people have shared ideas, thoughts like we should pay more. I'm not sure whether that would attract more candidates. We've had some pretty lengthy discussions about different ways to advertise and market. But I wanted to share what we are doing and then some things that we might want to think about moving forward. We spoke with the leadership team about advertising. We all decided that advertising in the Valley News, no offense to the Valley News, doesn't generate a lot of candidates for us. And one of the things that the principal shared with us is that for positions like our ed assistant positions, that a lot of folks get discouraged by the sort of cumbersome application process. We have an online tool we use, and there's just a lot of stuff they have to submit. And so we agreed that we can reduce the hoops that people have to jump through. We can try to streamline that process so it's easier to apply. And the principal sort of gave us a threshold for, do we really need 3 references? Can we get by with 2? Do we need them to fill out the entire work history, or can we accept the resume, and things like that to try to simplify the process? So we are in the process of doing that. We should have our tool School Spring modified and positions reposted either tomorrow or Thursday. Lisa reached out to Talk Partners and got a nice response, I thought. And so they're, I'm sure, just waiting for us to update our job descriptions, fix the postings in School Spring, and give them the link. And so we're hopeful that maybe that'll turn up some applicants. And the other thing is we might need to think about how we might invest in order to attract more people. I mean, I hate to say this, but we're competing with all the districts up and down the Upper Valley. And if someone's considering being a substitute, they're going to look at sub rates. If they're thinking about a job as an ed assistant, they're going to look at what they could make doing that type of work versus competing with McDonald's, who's offering $18 for night shift, which is more than we pay our ed assistants generally. There's a discussion underway right now about offering a referral bonus for substitutes to try to bump up our sub pool, where we could offer $100 or so to someone who's able to bring us a substitute who actually shows up and subs for us. There's been some discussion of borrowing from tactics used by the districts where they're offering signing bonuses for ed assistants. We think that those sorts of solutions would probably require either memoranda of agreement with our collective bargaining associations or sidebars. And I did today speak with Karen Ladd, who's our NEA New Hampshire UNISERV rep, about having this discussion in conjunction with another one that we're going to be having soon. It's interestingly, like, we've had people from different positions functioning in lots of different ways. I know a lot of our administrators have been pressed into duty either as cafeteria workers or substitute teaching or serving as ed assistants themselves. I did do some food service a couple weeks ago over at Marion Cross and have subbed, and I know our principals are being forced to go do those jobs often. So it's something for us to think about, and it's to the point where we may want to spin up the negotiations committee if we're going to be talking about some sort of a memorandum. And I think if we were talking about doing things like bonuses or incentive pay of some sort, that's something that would probably need to be negotiated, certainly would need to be agreed to by the board. So I wanted to throw that out there because I don't see it getting better. And we'll try these other less costly or not costly alternatives to see if it helps. But I don't know what else to do. I'm not the chair. I recognize both of you.
No, you just kind of ended abruptly there. I was looking at this yellow wire, figuring out where it was going. Kelly.
Sorry to interrupt you.
I was nervous. I didn't know what this was.
Okay, so my 2 thoughts. When I did fill in last year, and it was, I will to confirm, I knew that I was desperately needed like tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, before you start, go fill out the application. Yeah. And it is daunting. It is, and it's irrelevant for some things, right? Like so I would almost go further because we want to generate interest and know who might even be remotely interested before they fully had a chance to digest things. We might even want to have a first step, fill out a Google Doc, right? Like a Google survey. And then we'll go to this, if we think it's yeah, let's go on to the application. If we could just get
like
names,
a pre-screening
kind of like, that takes 2 minutes. I saw your posting, I might be interested, right? And that might be worthwhile. Other like random brainstorm that I had, I'm thinking about these kids who are doing these gap years from our school. Might be worth thinking about talking to some of those seniors about sticking around for a year and thinking about being an ed assistant for a year.
Sure. At the elementary school.
At the elementary
Yes.
school. Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Julie's like, no.
No.
We just got rid of them.
No, of course, at the elementary school. I mean, we already have kids going over to the middle school to help out,
I
right?
was saying, that actually saved us during that first year back in COVID.
Yeah.
We had 3 students
Yeah.
in the building who were college students who were taking the year off.
Yeah, so thinking about like a formal internship program of some sort with kids who are taking a gap year or a gap term or just home for, I mean, it might be worth thinking
So
about.
I assume ed assistants get background checks?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so why are we having all this additional work? They're gonna be checked on their references, they're gonna be checked on their prior employment, and so, it's all gonna be done. I don't know if we need them to fill out a full application if we're already gonna dig into it. So,
I'm just answering that there's a lot of like required information that we have to.
Before we can hire them, yes.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wonder whether it's worth, I know there used to be a time when Dartmouth met regularly with town people and the school, and I keep hoping that the new president at Dartmouth will reinitiate some of that stuff. But I'm just wondering if it was possible to put together a kind of benefits package with the community, understanding how important this is for the community. For example, if the Howe Library said, we will give you a family card. So somebody who's an ed assistant coming from, maybe White River Junction says, oh, I would love to have a library card and be able to take out books from the Howe Library. I mean, it's a conversation, but might it, for 10 people, it could be really cool. And maybe if Dartmouth said, we will give you a family pass to the Dartmouth Skiway for the first year. I mean, again, we're talking about something that isn't necessarily money for us, but could be something the community is willing to do to help us over our bump. So, I mean, those are just sort of the first 2 things that came to mind, but I'm sure somebody knows of something else.
Yeah, some new ideas.
Garrett?
I did.
Oh, well done.
You answered your own question.
Oh, sorry, a question. The ed assistants, so what is a qualification for the ed assistant? I mean, it's
High
just,
school degree, right? For ed assistant? Is it not high school?
Oh, yeah, because we're not certifying.
Right,
Right.
ed assistant is high school.
so it can be like a parent.
Yeah, that's it.
So there's something wrong with that process. Time my wife filled out this thing every year and she never gets a call. So
As a sub?
just to do stuff that.
Oh, it's volunteer.
Yeah, and it's gone through the application.
Maybe it's some
process and
background
stuff.
It's that time of night.
What don't you know, Garrett?
Yeah, I just had one last thing I wanted to mention. In other news, Lisa, Lily, and I attended the joint VSBA-VSA conference last week, which was really good and co-hosted by VSBA President Neil O'Dell and VSA President Peter Burrows, who's superintendent in Middlebury. And the theme was, how are our students doing? And the keynote was Kay Douglas, who's a senior consultant from the Texas Association of School Boards. And I thought she was great. And I felt like I sat, like the opening presentation, I felt it was a great board training. And then the follow-up workshop that she did, like we just went through this video, a series of video sort of do's and don'ts where you watched a board member make various mistakes and had to sort of identify what they were, which was entertaining and fun. So I think it'd be great if we could get her to come visit us at some point. So I just wanted to mention that and thank Neil. It was a really well-run conference.
Great. Any comments or questions for Jay? Moving on to Jamie.
I
Jamie,
don't have
it's-
anything formal, sorry.
Okay. And
I'm a
nothing
little
in?
busy. I can tell you that the RFP for the baseball field, we're just waiting for the official letter from the town of Norwich regarding the permitting process. So as soon as we get that, that RFP will be posted, okay? So we can start to bring in material earlier than the red grant. We will also be having meetings regarding formalizing the thought process on the new track and the placement of the, not the track itself, because obviously that can only shift a little bit here, but the placement of all the specials within the leftover available space. And we hope to have that RFP out, I believe, before the first of the year. This is going on in Dresden. We have filed the updated revenue projections in order to set the tax rates for both Hanover and Dresden. They were filed the 21st, I think, this last Thursday. And they've not been accepted yet. I'll send you copies as soon as they're accepted by the DRA. And then they'll go ahead and set tax rate. So we should get copies on those shortly. The audits should be finalized very shortly. We're just waiting for the actuarial projections on, I want to say GASB, but it's not on OPEB. They're just finishing that up now. We have a couple of follow-up questions. So as soon as that report comes in, we'll ship it off to the auditors. They'll finish up the audit. I expect it to be done before the end of December, or before the end of November, actually, so we can get it posted early this year. What else is going on?
Did the Vermont numbers we were waiting on, did those come in yet?
The Vermont numbers. They haven't released
The
them yet.
calculations, the new calculations?
No, I think they're still working on them. I haven't.
The
seen
waiting.
them.
Yeah, the
the
waiting.
model, the modeling numbers are not yet available.
No, I don't have them yet either. They did, interestingly enough, though, I just did receive a different set of numbers from them that they finally sent out regarding the special ed projections. But no, not for the waiting stuff.
Is that gonna slow us down a bit?
No, I mean, it doesn't impact this year's budget
Yeah.
necessarily.
Okay. But we still have to make some decisions, though.
We do, yeah. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, whatever happens in this budget, has the potential of setting up a steeper or a not so steep cliff for the following year.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions for Jamie?
We're working on, we'll have the first meetings of the budget on Wednesday. It'll be the first look for all of us who've been inputting all of the data. For Dresden will be on Wednesday, Hanover and Norwich are tomorrow. So for next week's meetings, we'll be looking at it possibly a second time. So, I mean, we always look at it first and then make decisions before it even gets to the.
Is that not on, that's not on our SAU calendar? I don't
Might
see
not
it.
be. It probably is not. It should be on your Dresden and Hanover.
Well,
Budget?
I think it's just one calendar, isn't it?
Budget meeting?
Because I get,
I thought our budget meetings are next week.
I'm looking at,
Their
I see,
administrations are.
Oh, internal, yeah,
this is
those are not.
this is the committee.
This is the first look for the administration.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha, okay.
They talk amongst themselves.
They look at the shocking results first
Okay.
before we bring them to you. Because we don't,
Okay.
we want to make sure we're prepared in case,
Any comments or questions for Jamie? Okay, moving on. We do not need a non-public.
Wow, woo, two non-public.
Then,
I note that the next Dresden meeting is the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. It would be helpful to have a show of hands on who can be here, just to make sure we have fun.
so, Thanksgiving is Thursday, November 24th, 2 days prior. Who thinks they'll be here to attend the board meeting?
Here?
In person.
In person, raise your hand.
7.
I don't know if I am.
School, is there school Wednesday?
Yeah, there's school Wednesday.
Well, then
Oh, there
you
is?
don't- You don't count as a.
There is.
There is.
There's
Oh,
no school
Ray School's-
Wednesday.
Ray
There's
School's
no
not
school
this
Wednesday.
close.
I don't know.
So, yeah, there's
I would,
not.
I would recommend, do we all want to push it back or
Julie really wants to be here.
move
then.
it forward to the,
To the 15th?
15th or
is that gonna work for the budgets?
There is, I do know on the 15th, there's an SAU 70 meeting.
That's what I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
like, we
Oh,
would
what
just be the
fun.
same night.
That's way too early.
Yeah, that's too, yeah.
What about just like a Thanksgiving Monday?
Can we do, would Monday be better?
Or the 29th.
22nd to the 15th.
I don't want them working over Thanksgiving.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's like
Well done, Rick.
probably not gonna happen. Maybe you can push it back the other way, yeah, push it later.
Well, I was gonna say, how about Monday, the 21st?
We're having second admin budget committee meetings
Yeah.
with the finance committee. That's the date that's scheduled right now for those meetings.
Jamie, if we push it to the week after, will you work all Thanksgiving?
Which we don't want you to do.
Possibly, but it doesn't matter because my husband will be in Tulsa. So that'll be fine.
And
It's all
Kim?
good.
Pretend it's the 22nd.
We'll just fake you out that day.
No,
Would
I would be great with the 29th.
Would, all in favor of moving the school board meeting to the 29th? Show of hands?
Or that Tuesday, whatever the Tuesday
One,
is.
That is the
two,
29th.
That's the
three,
29th.
Yeah, that'd be
1,
great.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's up there.
Neil's possible 8. Tom is, you're out of town, and then I don't know about Lily
And Marcella.
and Marcella. So why don't we plan on the school board meeting being moved to November 29th?
Just on that topic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Kari Osmus with my finance committee hat on. In past years, you had your December meeting scheduled a couple of days. Like, I think this year it's December 20th, and then at the last minute, you change it after we have 7 people, all set up. So if you're going to change the December meeting from December 20th, it would be good to do that sooner rather than later so that all of us can plan our lives around. what
So
we're
December
planning.
20th is a Tuesday, and the schools don't let out until the 22nd?
So, yeah, the school,
Yeah.
kids will be in school the following day in December.
So I don't see us moving to December
Okay,
20th.
that's great, past years you have, and I just, if you're saying you're sticking with it, that's good to know.
Don't quote me on it, but.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to be a proponent for it not being earlier, okay? Because
Yeah,
there's a lot to.
well, we could do it in between Christmas and New Year's, the 27th.
Oh, no, we could not.
No.
Okay, so the November school board meeting's been moved to November 29th. And at this point, does anyone have anything else to bring up? I'd like to go ahead and get a motion to adjourn
I'm gonna fix it on the budget meeting.
at, okay, 21:50.
Kim?